Cheery news of the week, the UK could be facing the longest recession in a century. But hey, it's not all bad. You could always be watching Matt Hancock eat kangaroo bits in the jungle. We will be talking about the big topics tonight. And Question Time comes from Horsham in West Sussex, just a short drive from Gatwick Airport. And the people of this area have delivered a Conservative MP continually for well over 100 years. But the audience here is selected, as every week, to reflect a range of opinion across the country and the voting record of the nation as a whole. And yes, tonight our audience do want to talk about the Australian jungle, but also the economy, immigration and the World Cup in Qatar. Welcome to Question Time. The Home Office Minister, Chris Philp. He was number 2 in the Treasury to the then Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng in Liz Truss's government. He was also previously a Minister for tackling illegal immigration. For Labour is Peter Kyle. He's been an MP for 7 years, and for the past year, he's been Shadow Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. He's also spoken publicly about his struggles with dyslexia in the past. Editor-in-Chief of the world-renowned magazine The Economist is Zanny Minton Beddoes. The most recent edition has a picture of the Prime Minister under the headline, "Reasons to be cheerful." Well, we'll see about that. Lord Stuart Rose is a Conservative peer and has vast experience in the world of business and retail. He's been CEO at Burton, Argos and M&S, among others, and is now chairman of Asda, the UK's 3rd biggest supermarket. And George the Poet is an award-winning artist, rapper and podcaster. He's a well-known social and political commentator, often using his distinctive musical poetry. Welcome to our panel. Welcome to you all here from Horsham. Very good to see you. And of course, welcome to you at home. Do join in Question Time in the usual way on social media at BBC Question Time. Let's hear what you've got to say. And before we take our first question, just a reminder that we are now live on the BBC iPlayer at 8 o'clock every week, in case it's too late to stay up and watch us after the news on BBC One. So live on the iPlayer at 8 o'clock. Right, let's take our first question, shall we, from Alex Bubb.
Is it now too late to avoid a long recession next year? Well,
as we've heard today, the Bank of England is warning that we could be facing the longest recession since the Great Depression. Stuart?
Sadly, it is too late. The recession is here. There's been some debate about whether we're in a recession or not, but we are. And you only have to look around you about what's happening, and I'm afraid we're going to have a very, very tough 2023. Some of us who are in business will be looking to do our plans for next year for our businesses. If your business year end is at the end of December or your business year end is at the end of March, we're looking at that. And I've been having such a meeting today on a company that I chair. And if you look at the headwinds of costs coming through on things like carriage, insurance, freight, cost of goods through the factory gate, I'm afraid inflation is here. It's here to stay. It will have an effect on people's propensity and ability to spend. And of course, we've got the budget coming, and the budget is going to be bad news.
And as chair of Asda, are you noticing already your shoppers tightening their belts?
Well, listen, it's not a secret. We run a survey which is independently run for us by one of the big audit firms, PwC, and 20% of all households in the UK, they're not exclusively Asda customers, 20% of all households in the UK are running a £60 a month deficit. That's a shocking number, but it's true.
Chris, the question is it too late to avoid a long recession next year? I mean, obviously, we've got the government's statement or budget, really. Might as well call it by what it is, on the 17th of November. Is there anything that we can expect that's going to make things any better?
Well, I mean, I think Stuart is right to say that we are in difficult economic circumstances. Andrew Bailey made the same point today when he announced the interest rate change. Of course, this isn't unique to the UK. We see similar issues around the world.
But Andrew Bailey did also talk about a UK premium and the UK's position standing being damaged by the Truss government. And of course, you were a great supporter of that government. I have to say, you're here. You were number 2 in the Treasury. You presume you're horrified by what the government is suggesting now?
No, look, I think what Rishi Sunak is doing since being elected as Prime Minister is trying to get the ship onto an even keel. There was obviously a lot of market turmoil a few weeks ago. That has thankfully largely settled down. Things like the currency and the government bond yields are back to pretty much where they were before the mini budget. As I say, there are global
Of course, that budget
challenges.
that you were a large part of.
Well, I mean, I wasn't taking the decisions, but I was in the government at the time.
Well, you were
You're right.
number 2 in the Treasury.
Yeah, I was in the government, that's right. I wasn't taking the decisions, but I was there, you're right. These are global challenges. We've seen Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan talk about a recession in America. The IMF, just a short while ago, said a third of global economies are going to suffer a recession. So, we are in difficult circumstances here and elsewhere in the world. The question is, what can we do about it? And there are some things the government, both the immediately previous government and indeed Boris Johnson's government, have done to try and make things a bit easier for households. I mean, Stuart mentioned the pressure a minute ago. So that's things like, the energy price guarantee to stop people suffering those £5,000 or £6,000 energy bills that we feared.
But is it anything that we can expect to
let me come. So the 5p of fuel duty, raising those national insurance thresholds to put an average of, I think, £300 or £400 in people's pockets, increasing the national minimum wage a few months ago by 7%.
Here next
so these are all things which are going to help people, in these difficult circumstances. As far as the budget or the autumn statement is concerned, obviously, I don't know what's going to be in that. We'll find out in a couple of weeks' time. What I think it will do is make sure we are being responsible as we face these new circumstances. And, we've seen Rishi Sunak as Chancellor a year or two ago get this country through COVID in unbelievably difficult circumstances. And the fact we've got the lowest unemployment now for about 48 years, I think is testament to the way that he steered us through that crisis. And I think he can steer us through these difficult global economic circumstances that we face today.
So why are you shaking your head at all that, Zanny?
So I'm shaking my head because Stuart, I completely agree with Stuart, the recession has already begun. We would have been in tough circumstances anyway because of the big shock that's come from global events. The inflation, the US has very high inflation, the war in Ukraine, energy prices. But frankly, it was made much worse by the incompetence of the Truss administration. So you have those spectacularly bad 3 weeks have made Britain's situation much worse. Now, yes, the Bank of England, we have got a dullness dividend. We've got competent people in Downing Street, but competence should be a requirement, not an ambition for a government. And now we've got competence, hopefully, but we've got this budget, coming up, and that budget is basically going to be allocating pain. We're going to see tax increases and spending cuts that are bigger than they would have had to have been if we hadn't had the stuff that happened in September. And they're going to make the recession worse because we're going into a recession anyway. Interest rates are going up further, probably not as much as the markets were expecting, but they are going up further. They're going up further because they have to get inflation down. And all of this is made more difficult by this huge gaping fiscal hole that we have, for which we have to raise taxes and cut spending, all of which is going to be really hard because things that are politically, the sensible ways to cut spending are bad for the economy, and the things that are politically somewhat easier, or economically sensible, are politically more difficult. And so it's just going to be
raising taxes.
It's going to be really tough. Yes, the fact that this government has said that it won't raise VAT, national insurance, or income tax when we've got the scale of challenge we have is barking mad. We should be considering all manner of things, or similarly, we should be considering phasing out the triple lock. The scale of the challenge on pensions, the scale of the challenge we have mean that all this stuff has to be looked at, and the problem is worse because of what happened in September.
Right, lots of hands. You were all sitting there, and none of you with your hands up, and they suddenly all shot up. So the woman at the very back.
I think the most vulnerable members of our society in this recession are children. There are already 800,000 children not eligible for free school meals but living in poverty in the UK. How will our society protect our most vulnerable members through what is to come?
OK, we'll come to that. Yes, the woman there in the blue top.
With the current crisis and us going into recession, should it be right that Liz Truss or any ex-PM still gets the allowance year after year for placing the UK in the economic mess that we're in?
Chris?
So I think the allowance is supposed to pay for office costs, but I've got to say, having been in office for like 45 days or whatever it was, it does seem, frankly, pretty unreasonable to be claiming it, and I hope she doesn't.
OK. The man there in the check shirt.
Just wondered how putting up interest rates helps inflation. People haven't got money in the first place, and now you're putting more money on loans for businesses, for households. How does that help when we've got no money in the first place?
Because, of course, the idea is that it will deter people from spending. What you're saying is we haven't got the money to spend in the first place.
Create a good economy?
Peter, what would Labour do in this situation?
Well, I think the points people are making are really important about how this is impacting people. We now understand how it's impacting businesses and jobs. We understand from economists that actually this recession, come to the original question, it is now probably here with us, and it's going to be a long and very painful recession. But we have to understand that for the last 12 years, there's left such a lack of resilience in families and in households and in people's finances. 20% of people in the UK have no savings at all. 44% of people in Northern Ireland, for example, have no savings at all. And just in the last few weeks, and as a result of the catastrophic decisions that were made in Downing Street and being paid for by workers up and down the country, people are paying an extra £500 on their energy costs. People are paying another, if you live in this part of the country, £695 on their mortgage. This is a Tory premium on mortgages that is being paid for up and down our country by 202 million people whose mortgages are due to expire at the moment. So the thing we have to do is stabilise the economy. That means having a plan, which we have, means all of our plans and policies are fully costed, so the markets can see where the money is coming from and how we're going to pay for plans.
So just give us an idea, Peter,
well, I'll give you an idea.
Exactly, because what we're talking, what we're being softened up for. What we're hearing is that, what's coming out of the Treasury to the newspapers and to the broadcast media is we're all going to have to face tax hikes of some sort, and we have to rein in spending. So what would Labour do? Well,
your question is, how will Labour solve the catastrophic hole in our finances caused by the Tory party? We will have to stabilise the economy and then move to a plan that grows it. We have both of those things. Firstly, in terms of actually getting people supported, let's take hungry school kids. We have a plan which is based on taxing and closing the loophole for non-dom status, so people who earn their money abroad but live here and don't pay any taxes here. We would close that loophole and we would fund, so every primary school kid can have food before going into school. We'd also use some of that money, so we would double the number of doctors being trained and triple the number of nurses being trained and quadruple the number of midwives being trained. This is the sort of thing, the plans that are going to tackle the challenges we have that are fully funded. Now, Rishi Sunak, he put up the national insurance tax, so he is funding hard-working people whilst himself and his family is avoiding tax by using the loopholes that we seek to close. Fully funded, tackling the challenges we have, then we will move forward.
His wife, who did have non-dom status, is now paying tax in the UK.
His family and he himself has avoided paying the taxes for which, he says that he will make eye-wateringly difficult choices. It just seems to me that none of the choices he is making affect him himself. I want to see a government that will actually put its money where its mouth is and put people first.
The woman there in the white top and the glasses.
It was only to the comment on the triple lock, because I just feel that the pensioners for a long time have really suffered. There's been no return on their investments because the interest rates have been so low, and that was promised in order to try and help pensioners keep abreast of everything. So there comes a point where they keep taking the brunt of it. Isn't it time that they've served their dues, they've put a lot of money in over the years, that they deserve to be looked after better than they are.
OK, and the woman there in the striped T-shirt.
Why doesn't the government go for what is politically popular and put another tax, a windfall tax, on the energy companies?
Right. And the man there in the spotty tie.
Just a comment that was made on the point of tripling the number of nurses and other professionals. Quite frankly, if the wages are not going to go up, people aren't going to go into those professions. The positions can be created. If the wages are not there in line with inflation, then people aren't going to want to go into those professions, so it's no good saying that the numbers will be tripled.
OK. George, I haven't come to you yet. What's your response to this question? Is it too late now to avoid a long recession next year?
I think the anxiety that a lot of people in the country are feeling is that we're heading for another round of austerity. We're hearing already talks about cuts to essential services, which have seen us through a pandemic and, as the gentleman just said, involve the labour of so many decent, hard-working people who are unrecognised, uncelebrated throughout this difficult period. And no, I actually agree with the point that Peter was making in terms of the double standard of government talking about sacrifices that we will collectively make when all the measures seem to be avoiding the obvious, taxing the people that need to be taxed to raise the revenue that will actually make a difference to how this country weathers the forthcoming storm.
So what you're saying, you want to tax, put more tax on people who are better off?
Yeah, more tax on people who are better off. And that's it's like talking to a brick wall with this government, but it's
well, look, you've got a member of the government here. Talk to Chris.
Yes, Chris. tax the people that need to be taxed.
Well, I mean, let me try and answer the question.
Obviously, you didn't want to tax the better off more. You wanted to tax them less. So that got reversed.
And you've got to be very careful. If you push any tax rate too high, you risk obviously driving people away. Some people have a choice about where they work. So you've got to be careful you don't push it too far. The top 1% of earners earn about 12% of all income. They pay about 28% of all income tax. So 1% of people paying 28% of all tax. So that is quite progressive, you know, richer people paying a lot more. Conversely, at the bottom end of the spectrum, people earning lower wages, we've successively lifted the thresholds. So now the first £12,500 of income, you don't pay a single penny of income tax, you don't pay a single penny of national insurance. And that obviously disproportionately benefits people on lower incomes, exactly as George was quite reasonably suggesting.
But tax thresholds have now been frozen.
So those thresholds were, when we came into office a few years ago, like 6,500. They've been doubled, which is way, way higher than inflation. We've also massively increased the minimum wage, introduced by Labour, but massively increased under this government, again, to help people who are working hard, struggling to make ends meet. It was £5.93 an hour when Labour left office. It's now £9.50 an hour. It's getting on for doubling. And I'm pretty sure it's going to go up a lot more in the near future as well. So those are all things. I mean, you're making a fair point, George. We're trying to lift people out of tax on lower incomes entirely and put up the minimum wage to make sure people who are working hard, doing the right thing, actually earn a decent wage.
I have a question. You said that you've got to be careful how much you push people in terms of high income earners, and you don't want to chase away the money that they might bring to this country. How much do you think you have done? Like, when you consider that the top 10th of earners in this country, the gap between them and the middle 10th is now, I think, 1.2 million per adult. You know, there's been an expansion of wealth inequality.
In terms of what they earn, or in terms of their assets? Or?
It means inequality, I think.
Right. So, yeah, how much do you feel like you guys have been holding these guys to account?
So I think, income inequality, I think what you're asking about, has been, it's gone up and down a bit, but it's been broadly constant over the last few years. On that top tax rate point, so I say the top 1% are paying 28% of all income tax. We've got to make sure people that have a choice about where they locate choose to locate in the UK. So I used to be technology minister, which is, we've got a booming tech sector, which is a real strength for our country. But a lot of tech businesses, they're internationally mobile. They don't have to come here. They go to Singapore, South Korea, the USA, anywhere really they can locate. We've got to make sure they choose to locate here, create jobs here, pay taxes here. So it's quite a delicate balance to strike. And it's obviously a matter of debate where we draw it. But when the top 1% are paying 28% of income tax, they are making a pretty big contribution.
Can I just weigh in and sort of pull all of these really good points that have been made together? We have a huge gap to fill. And we're going to have to fill this gap at a really difficult time. And I think the principles that you lay out are absolutely right. People with the broadest shoulders, people most able to pay, should pay disproportionately more. So the first question is, how much do you close this gap by cutting spending, and how much do you close it by putting up taxes? The last time we had Osborne austerity, 3/4 of it was done by cutting spending, with, I think, catastrophic consequences. So the fact that this time there is talk that it'll be a bit more even, more coming from tax, and than probably equal or something like that, is more sensible. Within spending, the reason I talked about thinking about phasing out the triple lock, and I agree with you there, pensioners have had a tough time in this country, but in the last 10 years, actually, the state pension has grown faster than average earnings. So, it's going to be difficult all round, and it's going to be parcelling out pain. Everyone's going to have to pay something. I think the lady who made the point about, kids in poverty, I completely agree. They are the most vulnerable. That's why I think universal credit should be protected, because these are the people who are really, really being hit hard right now. On the tax side, it's great to shoulder more for people at the very top, but it doesn't raise you enough money. Ditto windfall taxes. I agree there's a case for expanding windfall taxes. It's not going to get you the amount of money you need, which is why I came back to something like the income tax. We're going to have to do something of all of this. There isn't like a single silver bullet that can solve this.
Zanny, you're absolutely right. I mean, listen, you're all very intelligent people, but you all run your own budgets and you all know what's happening. Put this a different way. We've got an illness, and we've been to see the doctor, and the doctor says you're ill. The doctor says you're going to have to take some medicine, and the medicine's not going to be very pleasant. But if you take the medicine for a period of time and you take it early, you'll get cured and you'll get better. The longer you leave taking the medicine, the worse you're going to get, and the pain's going to get more unpleasant. So it's quite a simple fact of life. All of us ought to be carrying the burden. I agree absolutely with your point, George, and everybody else's, that those who are better off ought to carry a bigger burden. I am chairman of a company where many of my customers are at the bottom end of the income scale, and I worry about them. And of course, we're trying to do what we can to protect them, and that's what government is there to do. But we can't get away from the inevitability, if I might say so, of dealing with the problem that we have got today. And the gentleman asked the question, why do we have to put interest rates up? We have to kill demand at the moment because that is feeding inflation. And then when you get through that, i.e. the medicine, and you stop taking it, the doctor will say, right, well, you're going to get some exercise and you'll feel better.
Can I just quickly say...
Very quick,
it will be quick. But Chris, you seem to have forgotten that 6 months ago that you were the government that put taxes up to the highest point in 70 years. And you put the tax burden up most on those on medium to lower incomes.
Yes, but then he was in the government that wanted to cut taxes, only briefly.
Then he was
it was like 2 minutes ago. But...
Then he was in the government that blew a hole in our finances, crashed our currency, crashed our borrowing costs, and now we're spending £18 billion just servicing our debt as a result of that, and that's money spent on nothing. This is what you did, and then 2 weeks ago, you stood up in the House of Commons repeatedly and spoke against those people who are advocating a windfall tax. The thing about a windfall tax is we do need to share the burden of taxation, but we're not just on people, but on businesses too. We need to share the load equally. There are some businesses, not because of strategic genius, cunning or guile, are making billions and billions of pounds simply because Vladimir Putin invaded another country, invaded Ukraine. Now, those countries should be sharing the load. We can't load it all on people on lower incomes, which is what's going to happen. And it's not just incomes that are going to be clobbered, because our public services are going to be stripped. Who are the people who are going to suffer the most when the police are being withdrawn from more poor communities? What's going to happen when people are adding to the queue for the 7 million people already waiting for treatment on the NHS? It is people on lower incomes that are going to get the worst of it. So let's spread the burden evenly. Let those who can afford to pay more pay their share, but not just people, businesses too.
We've already got a 65% windfall tax on energy companies.
And a quarter of it's given back.
It's going to deliver. I didn't interrupt you. It's going to deliver £20 billion. You mentioned police. We're about to hire 20,000 extra police officers, and you mentioned the currency movements.
You're not.
The currency and the government bond yields have gone back to where they were.
Because I don't. But as you start with this list.
Well, what he said wasn't accurate.
No. Listen, I'm not trying to disrespect what you're saying, but there's big sighs coming through as you go through that list. I'm not.
Because if you cut 20,000 police and add 20,000 police, that's not 20,000 police. It's as simple as that. You cut 20,000,
going to end up with more than we started with.
and you haven't increased it by more than 20,000. So we're not even back to where we were.
Well, yes, we will be. We're going to have more police. We're going to have more police than we started with.
All right.
Well, we know you can't add up.
Let's move on. Before we do, I want to tell you that we will be in Wells next week, the rather beautiful Somerset Cathedral city of Wells, and the week after that we're in Snape, near the Suffolk coast, also beautiful. So if you'd like to be in our audience, go to the Question Time website, you can follow the instructions there, you can come and be part of our audience, and incidentally, the list of all the venues where we're going to be are there, so you can see if we're going to be near you and apply in advance. It would be great to see you. OK, let's take another question now. So many of you asked about this next topic. I wondered about starting with it, but given the news on the economy, I felt it might be slightly flippant. But I have to say, overwhelmingly, you asked about this. Can you guess what's coming? Georgina Rangecroft.
Should MPs be allowed to appear on reality TV shows?
Now, who could you be referring to? Obviously, the former Health Secretary during the pandemic, Matt Hancock, is going on, well, is already in the jungle, as far as I know, and will be appearing on a television near you from Sunday. Chris?
No, they shouldn't, and that's why he's had the whip withdrawn.
But how could you... should something be done to stop him? I mean, Georgina's question is, should they be allowed to appear on it?
I mean, I don't think they should be allowed to. How you do that, I mean, not short of, like, chaining him to the green benches, I'm not sure how you'd go about implementing that in practice. But no, I don't think he should be allowed. I mean, your question is a reasonable one. He's been elected by his constituents in, I think it's Suffolk, and no, he shouldn't be in Australia in the jungle.
So a fellow Conservative MP described him as... For going into the jungle as an absolute prat. Would you agree with that description?
Well, I think.
Would you like to echo that?
I think the audience have registered their verdict. But clearly, going on this programme appears to involve doing embarrassing things on CCTV, so I can't imagine why they chose him.
Right. Oh, blimey. Peter, I mean, part of what seems to have got people's goat, and there's lots of hands up, so I'm going to come to you in a minute, is that he is taking, as far as we are aware anyway, he's taking his parliamentary salary as well as the fee for appearing on the programme.
It's the fact that he's away from Parliament when we're dealing with things that are affecting people's lives. He's there, he's earning a lot of money, £400,000 for doing it, but he is an MP that was elected, and this is an incredible job. Being an MP, and it's the people who are going to be turning up to him, turning up to his surgeries, and he's not there. It's people who'll be writing to him, knowing that he's in a jungle somewhere else. He should be there. And yes, he's had the whip taken off him, but you know, this is about people who don't take Parliament seriously. Boris Johnson has been lying on a beach for week after week. He should have the whip taken off him.
I mean,
we do have recesses.
Obviously, the former Scottish Labour leader, Kezia Douglas, she also went on.
She was wrong to do it, but that wasn't the Westminster Parliament. She was wrong to do it. You know, we shouldn't. We should take these jobs seriously. These are special jobs that we have with special responsibilities, and we do have recesses. So, yes, he shouldn't be there, and also it's insulting some of the excuses that he's using for it as well. I mean, he just shouldn't be there.
Yes, because that's the point, because he's talking about, amongst a number of things, being able to talk about dyslexia, which he now campaigns for. And obviously you are dyslexic, you've talked about that. Does that cut any ice with you?
I find it quite hurtful, actually, because, you know, for me, who has overcome barriers in life, I want things like dyslexia and other barriers that other people have to overcome to be seen as gateways to success. I want them to be attached to success. So when I see Matt Hancock getting into a storm and suddenly throwing out dyslexia, I see someone who is using dyslexia and barriers and challenges as a shield. I see someone who is attaching dyslexia to failure. And that, for me, is hurtful. I think he is wrong to go there. I think he's wrong to throw that excuse out there. If you want to champion dyslexia and other challenges people face, well, there's a great place called Parliament to do it, where you can actually make laws that make things better for people. That's where he needs to be.
The man in the green shirt with the poppy, yes.
Yeah, I've no doubt he's going to be a fantastic celebrity. We all remember him trying to squeeze out a tear on TV when he was talking about the COVID vaccine. He's also got a book out to sell. No respect for the man.
Right. The man in the pink shirt here.
I think the irony with this particular situation is that the public get to decide whether they keep him there or not.
It's like an early election, if you like. Yes, the woman there, in the, I can't see, you're wearing a dark top. Yes, with a white T-shirt.
Yes, I just wanted to say, you asked how would you get rid of him given a choice. Surely, if you work for an employer and you bring them into disrepute by your actions, can you not dismiss him that way? Not that it would be difficult to bring your party into any further disrepute anyway, but I'm just saying that is a way out.
Well, the thing is actually, if you're a Conservative MP, you have to be convicted of an offence. You have to be suspended from the House of Commons by the Standards Committee for 10 days, or convicted of an offence under the Parliamentary Standards Act. There's very specific rules, but if you just think, I don't like what you're doing, and it doesn't come under, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, and it doesn't fall into any of those categories, then actually you can't trigger a sort of special election to get rid of him.
But he's getting paid for a job, and he's not able to do that job while he's away. So he's skiving, really, isn't he?
Well, you might say so. I couldn't possibly comment. He claims he's going to have some kind of hotline to his constituents, should it be required. I'm not entirely sure how that will work. George, I mean, just looking at this more broadly, MPs have second jobs. Don't all shoot me down. I'm just putting a point of view. Is it that significantly different?
Yeah.
I'm giving it a go.
I really don't want to dwell on this one for too long. I don't think it's even newsworthy. I think it's an embarrassment. I think it's an insult.
Well, just to say, we reflect what the people here want to ask, and lots of them want to talk about.
Of course, yeah. It's a talking point, and that's it. It's ridiculous.
Zanny?
So I think the main reason he shouldn't be doing it is because he's doing it in parliamentary time when he should be working for his constituents.
But as I say, and I'm not trying to draw the comparison...
You're right. MPs have second jobs, and if in his own time he wants to go off and be on the show and be a prat, fine. But the reason I think it is wrong is because he should be there for his constituents. More broadly, we are kind of torn in this country Because we've long thought that being an MP is somehow a kind of amateur thing that you combine with doing another job. And if we think that's wrong, then we should professionalise politics more. We should give people the resources to run parliamentary offices and do all of that. And then it's OK not to have a second job. I have some problems with some of the second jobs that MPs have. I actually think being a prat on a TV show is possibly less bad than, you know, lobbying for companies. So I think in the grand scheme of things that they do... Yeah, and but there are some things that are not sort of quite on the edge of that. Some of the things that MPs do and no one worries about are actually quite problematic, I think. So if you want to move away from that, which I would be in favour of, then have a more professionalised being an MP. But there is one thing that you lose from that, which is that I think some MPs who have, whether they're in the healthcare system or whether they're lawyers, they bring a sense of connection with the rest of the country and what real people in real jobs are doing. And I think we would lose that. So there is a real trade-off here.
Okay. Woman in the front here in the green top.
I really think that this is just another example and sum up all the failures of the government, one after the other, consequently for the past 5 years, I think. You know, I would like to say he should be in Parliament. He's been elected by his constituency. He should be there working for them. Going on a show like In the Jungle, he should be doing it in his own time after he's finished to do his work as an MP. But he has promised that time to his constituents and he should be there. So this, to me, sums it all up. There is no talent in this government at all. I really feel that the failure...
Are you including Chris in there?
Yeah, I'm talking to Chris as well.
Chris.
I think that there is no talent whatsoever in this Conservative government. One after the other has been an absolute shambles, failure after failure. And in all of this, really, leadership has been completely missed. I really miss, in the sense, Gordon Brown, because I could actually see the leadership in it sometimes. Much more than this government.
I'm tempted to say now, tell us what you really think, but I think... just out of interest, I mean, I say we had so much from you on this particular subject, and it was pretty clear the way it was going. Is there anyone here in the audience, and don't be deterred about putting your hand up if you do feel like this, who thinks... you know, maybe it's not great, but actually I'm just not that bothered. You know, frankly, yeah. OK, the man there in the blue shirt. There's a couple of you. The man in the blue shirt.
Yeah, so I mean, while he's obviously doing something which is just for his own gain, but he's got the ability to at least talk to people and change their opinion of him. So while it's not a good thing necessarily, he's actually going to be out there, and people might actually know him a little bit better than all the stories they've got. So I know that doesn't benefit us, but I'm saying it does give a different opinion of his character.
OK. Stuart, what do you think of it?
Listen, I don't want to say much. George, I think, said it. I think it does not pass the smell test, right? He should look himself in the mirror and say, is this what a parliamentarian who's got bigger responsibilities should be doing?
I mean, don't forget, of course, Nadine Dorris did, and then she became Culture
Listen, I'm not supporting any of these people. At the end of the day, we know perfectly well why he's done it. He's done it for the money. And actually, I'm with you, you know, Peter, to dress it up as saying I want to go and talk to dyslexics, it's just a joke.
Right. OK, I think we've covered that subject. For now, I'm going to move on and take another one, which is from Mark Jenkins.
With the number of people arriving in the UK by small boats reaching record levels, is our current asylum system in crisis?
Well, let's just remind ourselves what the Home Secretary, Fiona Bruce, has said about that. She has said the system is broken, illegal migration is out of control, and she also talked about an invasion on our south coast. That's how she described it. George?
The question the gentleman asked is the asylum system in crisis? It would appear that the Home Office's capacity to deal with the applications that it's receiving has reduced. I believe the Home Office is not doing the best job of processing the applications that are coming through. But in terms of the language of invasion and scourge that has been used by the Home Secretary, this is language that justifies violence against asylum seekers, against refugees. It is completely devoid of its global context. There are real long-term forces that drive migration from the same parts of the world, the poorest parts of the world, the parts of the world where we get cheap labour and cheap resources to allow us to live comfortably. So the system that continues to drive that migration definitely is broken. But the system that Suella Braverman has been beating her chest about, that has been in the hands of Conservatives for 12 years now. So who broke it?
Peter.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, the system is not working. Mark is right to put it in those terms, but hopefully when we come to Chris, he'll explain that the system is broken. I hope he will explain who broke it. Now, let's just look clearly at what does work when it comes to migration, when it comes to people who seek refuge in our country. The first thing that works is actually supporting people in country, development work, sometimes military support. When you're looking at Afghanistan, when you withdraw those things, people sometimes flee.
Yes,
The second,
fairness,
let me just finish the point.
When there are wars going on, the UK government's not going to be able to stop wars.
What keeps people, what supports people to stay at home is supporting them at home in development work and sometimes with military support as well. When people do leave and they travel through multiple countries, what works secondly is working with those countries to support people to stay where they are or to redirect and support them and have a very clear pathway forward that is a functional way forward. When people get into boats and come across, or they get to the channel to start coming across, then you have the third challenge that we have. The only thing that deters people from coming across in the channel is knowing that there is a functioning system at the other side, and they will be treated fairly but very swiftly, and those who do not pass the legal test to remain are returned rapidly. It is the only thing that deters people making that case. Now, the number of people who are making that journey across the Channel has quadrupled in recent years, and in the same time, the number of people being processed has halved. So the system isn't working.
When the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, certainly talked in the summer about wanting to put a cap on numbers, Suella Braverman has again said she wants to bring numbers down. David Cameron famously talked about tens of thousands. What's Labour's position on numbers?
Well, I've just explained that Labour's position on numbers is making a functional system, so there are fewer people who actually want to cross the Channel in the first place. Every single stage I've just described, Labour has a plan for, sort of returning development support,
do you have an idea in mind of what kind of numbers you would find acceptable?
We would never... So things like Afghanistan will always happen. Things like Ukraine will always happen. So I can't say what the numbers of people who are going to seek refuge in our country is going to be in 2 years' time. But having a functional system means you can control the system, because I believe that people now believe that it is out of control. Now, I think the government here, they are getting things wrong. They think that actually being tough is what they want to do, but they're actually being nasty. They don't understand the difference between being tough and being nasty. What is tough is getting a system that actually works in place. So what we want to do when it comes to the criminals who are involved in this trade, because it's become a trade, because it is such a broken system, we want to scrap the Rwanda scheme, set up with the money a programme, a cell within the National Crime Agency that can root out and tackle the criminality. We will work with our partners abroad to arrest people who are involved in this trade abroad, and we will do so if they ever set foot on our soil here and they're engaging in criminal activity. We will give them the resources to arrest them here and make sure that trade is shut down.
Let's hear from our audience. The man there in the front in the blue shirt.
This isn't meant to sound flippant, but I had a wonderful holiday in Albania this summer. And I have to tell you, a sample of one I know, but when you look at the people that are coming from Albania and how many individuals that are coming, and I don't see the issues, or I didn't see the big issues in society in Albania, but it won't work if you start poking people in the eye, the Albanian Prime Minister in the eye. You want to get him on side so you can get these guys back to where they should be.
Absolutely.
The woman there.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Instead of sending them back to Rwanda or Paraguay or somewhere, why don't we put them to work while we're finding out if they're allowed to stay here? I'm sure there'll be lots of skills involved in these people, and we could actually put them to work. Nobody's even thought about that. We just cage them in a prison.
You do make a very good point, if I might say so. It is one of the nonsenses that we have these people sitting here, we're paying £7 million a day to keep them in hotels, and we don't let them go to work. There cannot be a way that you cannot say, here is an identity card, go out, report every week, and come back. In the meantime, go and earn some money, give yourself some self-respect, and add something value to the community, and prove why you should have a right to stay here. Yes. But let's just go back to the basics. I'm not attacking you, Peter. because I think your party's doing some quite good things at the minute, if I might say so.
And that's a Conservative peer saying that to you.
But I think we should get away from this playground chat. You know, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. Because I could take you back 25 years about immigration, and I think you might have been in charge. Not you personally, but your government. The immigration has been around for thousands of years. There's been immigration. People come here. Mostly it's economic migration because people who have got no food, no water, no education, no prospects for their children, and no way of bettering themselves want to come to a better place. My father was an immigrant to this country. My mother was an immigrant to this country. I probably wouldn't get in today, or they probably wouldn't. So let's not knock it. We've done that. People have come here from persecution, political persecution. We've had people from the Pale of Russia. We've had the Huguenots. We've had the Ugandans. We've had the Syrians. We've had everybody here. And now we've got these people. Now, there's always in that migration people who are going to game the system. But we have to be, if we're a caring, rich country, and we're apparently the 5th largest economy in the world, even with our recession.
I think it's 6th now, but yeah.
6th. But we have to accept that it's part of our duty. The world is changing. The world isn't from 1945. It's not 1955. It's 2023. And we either live in this country and accept that that's what it does, or we go somewhere else. But you can't stop it. Now, what I don't like the way that we're dealing with it. I don't like the rhetoric. I don't like the fact that, you know, the Home Secretary is standing there. He goes to Manston today in a Chinook helicopter. What sort of message does that send to anybody? Are we starting a war with these people down in Manston? How do we ever allow the person to do that? How could she speak with such dangerous language about a problem? And you made the point, and several others have made it, and the gentleman there made it. This will only be solved by negotiation. And it will only be solved by people sitting around a table as everything is solved, whether it's the Northern Ireland Protocol, whether it's the Rwandan situation, or the issue about Rwanda, or whether it's, you know, the public order bill, which is going through the House of Lords at the moment. All has to be sat down and talked through very carefully. But we are a compassionate, caring country. We are a big country. We do need these people. And irony of ironies, having come out of Brexit, dare I mention the Brexit word, we are short of labour. Mm-hmm. We need these people. So I'm going to go a little bit further before I get shut up by Fiona.
I was thinking, so you were trying to bring someone else in.
Many people who voted for Brexit are the people who are now complaining that they can't get their apples picked or their cherries picked or this picked. Lots of able-bodied people came to this country every summer. They did heavy work. They did pick our fruit. £75 million of fruit and veg rotted in our fields this summer, right? They did that work at wages that other people wouldn't do it for. And I know your point, George, is that maybe that's cheap labour, but we need the labour. We've now got to a situation where we stop those people coming in, and we're now giving 6 months visas to people to come from Nepal to pick our apples and people to come from Malaysia to pick our apples. How does that work? How did we end up in this mess? It's crazy. But immigration needs to be sorted. I'll shut up.
No, I completely agree with you. We need people. But I don't think having people come in small boats across the busiest shipping lane in the world in November is a safe way to do this. So we do have a problem there. And that problem, I think, has got a lot worse.
Zanny, sorry to interrupt. That would be solved if we hadn't stuck 2 fingers up to our French and Dutch and German and Italian colleagues for 5 years, because they basically said, Monsieur, it's your problem.
Yeah, we're in violent agreement. This has got much, much harder, frankly, since Brexit. Because when we were part of the European Union, asylum seekers had to register in the first country they came to in the European Union, and they stayed there. Now they come, they want to be in the UK, they make that journey. We have to work with the French.
They didn't have to stay there. There was nothing saying that they couldn't then move on to the UK.
But they have to
claim asylum.
To claim asylum, they had to go back to the first country that they came to in the EU. Once they've got asylum, then they can go anywhere in the EU. But now we have a situation where they want to come here, and you're completely right. We have to work with the French. The only way you're going to stop this growing number of boats is by working with the French. Instead, we have a policy which is kind of somewhere between incompetent and cruel. We need to process things much faster. The rhetoric about invasions is totally not helpful. We need to work with the French, process asylum seekers so that people who are able to be here can have their things processed quickly, and then they can join the labour force and work. We desperately need these people. And people who are not able to be here, economic migrants who we can't take all economic migrants, they are moved back very quickly. But Rwanda, Paraguay, whatever, these are non-solutions from a government that is really trying to be performative and not try and deal with the problem.
Fiona, just one last thing. This gentleman had me nodding after. I never thought in my lifetime I would hear myself agreeing with the Albanian Prime Minister on Radio 4 this morning.
So when he said the government was acting like a madhouse, you were agreeing with that, were you?
I'm sorry, Alan, I will shut up.
OK. So, Chris, you've got the Home Secretary saying the system is broken, migration is out of control. There's general unhappiness about it. I think that's a fair thing to say. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I mean, you were Minister for strategy when it comes to illegal immigration and for returns for 2 years. What was it, 2019 to 2021? What went wrong?
Yeah, well, let's try and sort of analyse the situation, taking it as a whole. So, I mean, Stuart is right. We are a generous country. We do look after people who are genuinely in need. And let me give you a few recent examples. When the war broke out in Ukraine, we immediately welcomed people to this country, and I think over 150,000 Ukrainians have now come. When the Afghan government fell last year, we brought over people. When Kabul fell, we've got the Arak and the Arab scheme. I think now about 23,000 Afghans have been welcomed into the United Kingdom, safely and legally. When there was that awful war in Syria, when Bashar al-Assad was murdering his own citizens, aided by Putin, we had a resettlement scheme, a legal resettlement scheme to bring Syrians from the edges of Syria and from camps in neighbouring countries legally and safely directly to the United Kingdom. And it was mostly vulnerable people, so particularly women or people with health problems.
So something just to stop you going through a list, but hang on just a second.
It's quite important. It's important.
I appreciate that you are saying that there are things the government has done right and that where it has welcomed refugees. I totally take that on board. But nonetheless, you've got the Home Secretary saying the system is now broken. Yeah. Was it broken when you were partly responsible for it, or has it all gone?
Well, I think it's been
pear-shaped since then.
I think it's been developing for a while. I mean, in addition to all of those people
you can tell us what it's like from the inside.
Yeah, no, I'm about to. But in addition to that, last year we've issued about 1 million visas for those people and students and workers. So we are welcoming.
So what's going wrong?
A lot of people. So we've got these legal routes, both for work, for students, and for genuine refugees. You've then got the people who cross the channel on small boats. Now, the nationality mix has changed. Albanians are currently the predominant nationality. A number of European countries, for the reason the gentleman said, just say Albania is a safe country, full stop. You just can't claim asylum at all from Albania. For whatever reason, they've chosen to come here on these small boats. They're in a safe country already. France is a safe country, obviously. Whatever country you come from originally, you could and should claim asylum in France or Germany if you're there. There's no need to make this dangerous journey. And we can't have a system where people make these dangerous and illegal journeys unnecessarily. So we've got to find a way of stopping these journeys. It is, I mean, she's right, the Home Secretary, it is out of control. I think it's so far 40,000 this year. It's causing enormous problems. We can't really absorb 40,000 people just turning up a year. I mean, it's just pretty much impossible to deal with in any kind of sensible way, just from an operational perspective. So how do we go about welcoming people who have legitimate reasons, the ones I just mentioned a minute ago? I didn't even mention the guys from Hong Kong, but stop the illegal ones. And I think
what about this idea that Stuart's suggesting we have that... And actually came from the Prime Minister of Albania as well. He said, look how Germany sorted it out. People came from Albania to Germany. The people who came illegally, we sent them back. The people who could work, while they were waiting to claim asylum or they claimed asylum, we gave them a job.
So we have,
Is that something the government would consider?
So we have a deal with Albania, actually, despite the Prime Minister's remarks earlier, that was made, I think, last year, where we can rapidly return people to Albania. And I think that is being activated. No, it'd been done a lot faster than that. And by the way, since Peter has popped his head up, he talks about wanting to prosecute people for illegal offences. Yeah, when we took the Nationality and Borders Bill through Parliament, which increased the criminal penalties for dangerous people smuggling, guess who voted against the increased penalties for people smuggling? It was Peter and others in the Labour Party. When we were trying to deport dangerous foreign national offenders, we're talking about murderers and rapists back to their country of origin, not Rwanda, who was it that popped up and claimed that these murderers and rapists shouldn't leave the country? It was the Labour Party. So I'm not taking any lectures from Peter, but the system has degraded under legal challenges over the last few years, and it does need fundamentally reforming because it's not working at the moment.
Let's hear a bit from our audience before I take another question. The woman here in the green scarf.
So firstly, I'd just like to point out that the basic question was the system broken?
Yes, it is broken.
And you've just tried to spin to us...
No, it is broken.
A whole myriad of things of making us try to lose track of it. But it's not just the asylum system. I would say that the NHS system has been busted. I think the transport system has been busted. I think education is in failure.
Courts.
The court system is in absolute turmoil. Dare I pick up your point, Mr. Rose, and say how much of this, potentially, is down to Brexit? And given so many of your party are prepared to stand up and say, oops, sorry, I made a mistake, I've changed my mind about something, is there a possibility that the country may have changed its mind about the effects of Brexit too?
All right. Goodness. man at the back in the yellow shirt.
I think it's fair that Chris acknowledges the fact that there is a problem and the system is broken, but the problem is that he's not taking responsibility for who got us into the problem in the first place.
And is there... I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of the language that the Home Secretary used on this panel, as well as more widely. From some of the questions that came in this evening, I could see that not everyone was critical of that. Is there anyone in the audience who feels that actually she was that she was right to say what she did? Yes, a woman there in the blue shirt.
They're coming here illegally, and there could be many criminals. You know, we don't know who they are.
And when she talked about an invasion, you felt that was the right...
It is an invasion.
That's how it seems to you?
Yeah.
OK. All right, and the man behind you's hand suddenly shot up. Yes.
I think the similar language was being used several decades ago when the large Asian community were exiled out of Uganda, came to the UK, and we look at their economic contribution to the UK economy, which has been immeasurable. But we're still using the same language then as we are now. We were wrong then. Are we wrong now?
OK. And George, of course, your parents are Ugandan, is that right?
My parents are Ugandan, yeah.
And they came in.
It's just interesting, this question of scale, because what you get is that the potential threat that the lady spoke to is just inflated. I think less than 0.1% of this country is refugees. I think it's 0.18%. Public funds for that 0.18% are £38 a week per person. And over 1 million people in this country have no recourse to public funds. So, like, where is this threat that is suddenly overwhelming the country? I don't see it.
OK, let's take another question. We've only got about 7 minutes left. I want to try to fit this in. Dan Becker.
With the increased awareness for inclusivity in sport, should we be supporting the Qatari World Cup, considering their appalling human rights record?
Peter.
Well, I think fans should be able to go and support their team, and I think that's a non-political act. I think that representing, though, political parties and going is a political act. So I don't think...
What about the Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford? Of course, is Labour. He's going.
I wouldn't be going. The Labour Party here under Keir... Well, I am going to answer the question. I think Keir Starmer has said that none of our front benchers are going. If I was Mark Drakeford, I wouldn't be going. But Mark has a very specific challenge that isn't elsewhere. He does represent a country, Wales. He's the First Minister. If he doesn't go, then the other deputies and other parties will go and represent Wales for them because they've said so on the record. So he is in a very specific situation. Now, I wouldn't be going and representing, but I understand the circumstances that he's put forward as his reason for going. Look, I'm pleased the Prince of Wales isn't going. He is the heir to the throne. He represents, the head of state as his son. I'm pleased he's not going. I'm pleased we're not having that kind of high-level political representation and royal representation. It matters. But fans, of course, them going and supporting England in our matches and other teams that are playing, that's a non-political act. But I think if you are going and your attendance can be interpreted as a political support, it shouldn't happen.
Stuart.
I think I broadly agree. I mean, we can't stop fans going. It's their sport. I think we should just do it in a low-key way with the politicians.
George?
I just want to remind everyone that I think 100 unaccompanied minors are still missing from UK hotels that they were placed in. So yeah, broadly, Britain should think about its track record in terms of what it deems appropriate. We have a very friendly relationship with the Saudis, who are, obviously it's not a like-for-like comparison, but there are a lot of reports of human rights abuses, migrant workers' rights abuses in that region. But I also take the point that it's footy and it's not political for a lot of people.
And what did you think of the Foreign Secretary's remarks, James Cleverly, when he talked about, encouraging fans to be respectful? He was talking about the fact that homosexuality is illegal in Qatar, and he was saying, with a little bit of flex and compromise, it can be a safe, secure.
Well, it sounds apologist. Sounds apologist to me. I wouldn't have said that. So, I don't know. Well, Chris, what do you think he meant?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. So I'd probably take a slightly different view, actually, to what James said. I think if somebody happens to be gay and goes somewhere, they shouldn't, anywhere in the world, feel they have to hide that, because it's a basic freedom and a human right to be able to live how you want to live. And I don't think anyone should feel under pressure to do anything different.
And in terms of supporting the World Cup, politically or otherwise, should we be doing that?
Well, I think it's obviously a forum where world leaders are likely to congregate. I mean, we've already heard...
So will the Prime Minister be going?
I don't know, to be honest. We've heard Peter Kyle a second ago make the case why Mark Drakeford, as a representative of Wales, should go. You could obviously make similar...
He should go.
Well, you said you understood why he was going, I think.
No,
You were justifying...
I put his perspective forward.
Yeah.
I said I wouldn't go.
No, you said that, that's right. But you explained why he was going and why it was useful from a Welsh sort of national perspective. And I can see why it might be useful for ministers of Western countries to go and to meet others and so on.
Do you think he should?
Who?
The Prime Minister, do you think he should go?
I think it's up to him. He needs to make a judgment about whether there are people there he needs to meet, and there's a range of diplomatic considerations to trade off. It's not a decision I have to make myself because I haven't been invited.
OK. Man there in the blue cap. Yes, you, sir.
I think this issue of the World Cup being held in Qatar, I think it is already like a non-issue.
It's a non-issue?
Yeah, it is a non-issue because recently I saw the interview by one of the Qatari leaders, and he said that everybody is welcomed in the country, but as long as you respect their culture, because they've got like a different mindset there. So I don't think that that this World Cup, I don't think it should be banned.
You don't think it's that big a deal?
Okay. I think everybody going there, should go like with an open mind that this is a different country. Otherwise, if you're going to talk about like banning countries, then we end up banning many countries that I don't think that they're going to have a chance to host this World Cup.
Okay, the woman here in the front.
As an avid football supporter, I find myself actually torn with the World Cup. Quite clearly, it's going to a country that has astonishing views on human rights, and as a queer woman or member of the LGBTQ, I will struggle to see players who I respect to the Premier League actually stand in a country and know that it's okay and feel it's okay to take away what we're supposed to be great about this country, and we're going somewhere that we're going to normalise crime, pain, and just in the name of a game, and it's supposed to be okay.
Zanny, we haven't got much time left. What are your thoughts?
So I think for me the biggest question is why on earth Qatar is hosting the World Cup in the first place. I think that's the real... That decision having been made, I do think there is something about supporting a British team. And politicians often go to places where there are terrible human rights records. And I think the important thing is to stand up for the kind of values that Britain stands for and make them very clear while you're there. But I'm leery about saying politicians should never go to places where games are held where there's terrible human rights record, because in the end you're there to support and bolster the British team. And it's a loss to the UK if you're not going there. But so I think now it's happening there. I think it's actually OK that Mark Drakeford's going. I would make it a fairly low-key representation, but I think it's OK that they go. But then when you're there, stand up for the liberal values that Britain stands for.
Right. There's a number of you who want to talk about it. I'm afraid our time is up. Our hour is gone. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you to our audience here in Horsham. Very good to see you. And, of course, thank you to you at home for watching. And remember, we are live on the iPlayer 8 o'clock every week as well. From Question Time in Horsham, from all of us here, bye-bye.